Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
You ready?
Showtime.
On May 3rd, summer starts with The Fall Guy.
Let's do it later.
Let's drink a spicy margarita.
Make some bad decisions.
Yes!
Audiences are falling in love with the most entertaining film of the year.
Fall Guy.
Fall Guy?
Fall guy.
That's what the poster said.
See Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt in the movie critics say exists to make you happy.
Trying to make it out?
Nope.
Because I don't either. It's not what I'm into right now.
What are you into?
Talking.
Yeah.
The Fall Guy. Only in theaters May 3rd. Rated PG-13.
Really?
Yes, Tara. I said get your
Okay.
mind right. Because, it's the Blazers Edge podcast. And we've got plenty of things to talk about. I don't know if I want to start off with the two awful losses. Or we're going to talk about the highs before that. Winning was 6 of 7, which was fun. And much less, crappy. But yeah, I'm Dan Murray. As always, I am here with my studious co-host, Tara Bone Biggs, a.k.a. Team Mom. Yeah.
Oh, we are starting.
So yeah, we're starting.
I wasn't sure if we were actually starting.
Yeah, no, I told you we're gonna try this like the Blazers. We're gonna just start it cold at 9 o'clock in the morning. Except it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday afternoon. We're getting ready, or we're recording now as the Super Bowl plays because I don't care about this game. It's kind of the same feeling that I had against Toronto. So yeah, I think we're in the same boat here. Tara, how are you doing?
I also am not into the Super Bowl right now, and I am excited to talk about the Blazers because, about a week ago, I texted you and I was like, it's kind of hard to think of good things to say when the Blazers are playing really well, and then you laughed at me.
I said they're still this weekend.
Well, it's not like I didn't know things were coming up, but let's recap. So over the last week, the Blazers are 2-2. They looked great after their 3 days off, which I had been so worried about. So I was glad to see that was not a concern.
We talked about during the lead up in that what was going to happen out of that, whether or not that too much time off, they get rusty, or whether or not the rest was needed. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Maybe the rest is what kind of helped propel CJ to his 50-point game, since we do need to touch on that since it's been a podcast since we talked about that.
Yes, that was a fun game to watch. It was also against a pretty depleted Clippers because they didn't. Bulls, you mean. I thought Doc maybe was going to have to suit up that night because they were so short on players. But the important thing is that the Blazers did what they were supposed to do. We keep saying they need to win the ones they should, and that was one that they should, and they went out and won it. They didn't get in their own heads, and they didn't look past the Clippers in that one. So that was nice to see them come out and take care of business, and for CJ to have such a great night. Now, what do you think was key? Was it just like it just happened that CJ had the hot hand and everybody was just feeding him and that's how it was going to be?
Remember, I think you're blurring our wins together. We had CJ was with Chicago. The Clippers game was when they almost blew it.
Yeah.
Trust me, I know that after watching this week has been kind of like the synopsis of the Blazers season. Like, hey, awesome game. Somebody went off. It was great. Everything was fun. Let's throw down alley-oop dunks and do all kinds of stupid stuff all game. And then there's, hey, we have a 20-point lead. Let's go ahead and blow this. And then somehow miraculously save it against a team we should have no business losing to. And then there was, hey, this should be a good matchup with the Raptors and get absolutely hammered. And then, hey, the Celtics are shorthanded. This is a game the Blazers should win. Let's go up 16 and just choke this one away. So, yeah, I think you saw pretty much the full spectrum of the team right there.
I would like to suggest that we ban the use of the word should, because there is nothing about it's not just the Trailblazers. It's pretty much any game in the NBA. Anything could happen to just about any team at just about any times, except for the team from the Bay Area.
Yeah, I was going to say, right now, Boston is, I think, almost on that level. Houston's almost on that level. And yes, they can drop eggs, but the likelihood of egg dropping.
You were saying that, you were very comfortable with the lead that the Trailblazers had over Boston today. You were very comfortable with that.
No. When we were talking about that exchange. Out of your mind
to ever think that a 16-point lead means anything.
No. Okay, we were talking about that exchange. You're not going to drop that one on me and leave. That was my producer, Chris Burkhart, who basically said, to quote him exactly, yeah, the Blazers are winning. As I always say, a win is a win, but don't kid yourself here. This is the Celtics JV squad. Now, you took that as, I think he said that this is a secure and comfortable win. But when I read that, and yes, he said a win is a win, but when you're looking at it, it was like the way that they were playing and the fact that even though it was a 16-point game, it didn't feel like a 16-point lead. When I looked at that, the most important thing to me there was not the win is a win. It was the Celtics JV squad. Like, you can't screw around with that and hope to pull out a win, and, that's kind of what, didn't happen.
But the whole thing about the Celtics is that they're a system, and, like, whoever you plug in there. I mean, they still had some of their –
they're a system with 1,000,000 guys. Their system is populated with nothing but two-way wings. Like, if the Blazers could just have one, like, can we borrow one? We'll take the last one. I'll take Gershon. Yabusele's a human tank. I mean,
that's a big dude.
He got in there with Collins, and I'm like, Zach, that's not the one, dude. He outweighs Collins by like 65 pounds, and it's not fat. That dude is baby Shaq, but he's just jacked. I mean,
yeah, he has muscles on top of muscles.
Yeah, he is a massive human being, and he's like the end of their bench. Like two-way dudes. He's 6'8", like 290. Like, how does that happen? You got Ojale, you've got Jalen, you've got Tatum. Hayward's injured, but he's like, you wouldn't even see these other guys. Abdul Nader, you've got freaking. I mean, it's just they have all of them. Why can't we have one? Like, just one. Thies. I mean, good God. I mean, Kadeem Allen even played.
I don't know what to tell you, Dan. If that, if all you can concentrate on is on the things that you want and all the things that you don't have, I don't know where we're going to go with this today. So I think that we should go back and we should talk about what the good things were that we saw about the wins, and then we can go into the last two games.
Fine.
Because the month of January has been pretty good for this team. The Trailblazers have had success in January.
Well, this ain't your Trailblazers January now, is it? It's February.
No, I'm saying they had.
I know. They had a great February, and shout out to Coach Stotts for winning.
You mean January?
Did I say February? Yeah, whatever. I'm a rock star so we'll go with it. But again, shout out to Coach Stotts, Coach of the Month. Undefeated at home, which was nice to see. Get back to the winning ways at home. Because I don't care how bad this team is. If you can't win at Moda, man, it just feels dirty to me to not be able to win at home. Like, my entire adult life has been nothing but, no matter how good or bad the Blazers are, they win at home. So to see that stretch where they had the statement jerseys and everything going awful, and no thanks.
What did you think about the new city jerseys?
I like them a lot. I like them almost much as I hate the statement jerseys. Like, I do not like the statement jerseys in any way.
They're the red ones, right?
Yeah. So the city jerseys, my only complaint, and this was kind of what I was leaning towards when I kind of first saw them, was that they didn't lean in hard enough. Like, if you're gonna go plaid on a professional sports jersey, lean in. Like, go hard plaid.
Yeah, I think even just a nice subtle little red line in there.
Yeah, give me something so break
you can
it up.
See it more easily because it's hard to see.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest complaint we talked about on Blazers Outsiders the night after they debuted, and everybody that I saw that commented on them, that was their complaint too. So I think for the Blazers, they hit like a 9.5 out of 10 on those. I mean, what was your take?
Well, maybe in the future they'll.
Was there anything about that other than that you didn't like?
No, I think they're good, and I really started to like the fit of all the new jerseys as well this year.
The cut on
them. Pardon me?
The cut on the jerseys, like how they kind of hang. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the fit, and I have to admit, as hard as it is for me to admit, I'm starting to like the statement jerseys. I don't know if it's just because I'm getting used to them.
Do you collect ugly puppies?
I don't know. They don't bug me as much as they did.
So, it's fine.
I think part of it is because they actually do look a lot better on the players than they did when they were just hanging.
I just refuse to acknowledge them because the red isn't the right red.
Well, maybe it's the new red, Dan, and you're just going to have to adopt.
I am going to hipster the living hell out of these jerseys. I will not be the new red Blazers. Nope. Then again, okay, if you want another criticism on the city jerseys, I love the piping on the city jerseys, the plaid jerseys, like the piping down the sides. I think the design is wonderful, and I love the way that Rip City is displayed. But again, the wrong color red. I think the two things that they could have done was, like you said, add the contrast and give it the actual Rip City Portland Trailblazers red treatment. If you change those two things to those, they could compete for my favorite jersey of all time. Well, which is the Blazers throwback red with the vertical Blazers down the chest, the old throwbacks. Those by far my favorite jerseys. So,
like the Bill Walton ones.
Yep. Love
the ones that they were.
Love that era jersey. To me, it outside of the Oakland Raiders original kit, it's the cleanest original design in professional sports.
Well, I think you may have to get on board that the Blazers red is a different red than the red that you grew up with.
I will not.
Big surprise. Well, let's talk about what we've learned from the last two games. My biggest question about the game against Toronto is, why does Toronto have the Blazers number? What is it about the team that makes Damian play so well and everyone else look like they're sleepwalking?
Okay, so
what is it about the teams?
Yeah, so here's a quick little story. I was telling my boss at NBC, because he's a Boston guy. I was like, hey, if you want to catch a game, like what should be a competitive game, watch the...
I'm going to start fining you every time you drop a reference to your TV gig. You're going to owe me $5.
Hey, you know what? This is relative. So he's a Boston guy, and we were talking basketball, and I said, hey, if you want to catch a good game, watch the Blazers-Raptors game. I'm like, it's for the last few years, no matter what happens, there's usually really good breakout performances from Dame. The competition between the two teams is really good, and it comes down to the wire. Now, when I went back,
did you forget about the 6-point quarter earlier this season?
Well, I said there was the one stinker this year that we had, but if you go back, there was 2 overtime games, Dame's 50-point game. There's been, I think, like 5 of the last 7 have been decided by 6 or less. And it hasn't been the kind of they got it down to 6. It's been the like who has the ball last, who doesn't screw up. Mm-hmm. But what I didn't realize was the Blazers haven't beaten the Raptors since 2015. The Blazers have come up short on every single one of these games. I was like, I could have swore they won 2 in there, because I knew they dropped the one where Dame had 50 because they wasted that effort, because that was just insane. But I knew they had the stinker.
They haven't beat Toronto since 2015.
Yeah. They've lost 7 straight. I was like, ugh.
So since those days, both teams have had their same backcourts, right? And that's always the marquee matchup. So what's going on?
I don't know, because Kyle Lowry's a great defender. Here's the thing. Damian Lillard's highest scoring average versus any team is the Toronto Raptors. In the Toronto Raptors history, he has scored the 4th most points per game against them. I believe it's 4th most. I gotta pull the stat back up now, because now I'm gonna lose my mind. But
deep breath, Dan. Deep breath.
Yeah. Iverson's number 1 all time, and he played against the Raptors something like 48 or 50 times.
And that's the average of scoring against the team, or is it total?
That's his average was 28 or 29.
Iverson averaged the most against Toronto in all time.
Yep. Let's see, I'm on. I can thank you. Shout out to StatMuse for having this. Points per game versus Toronto Raptors. Oh, there we go. So this season, in his 2 games, he's averaged 34 points a game, which is pretty good. That's going to raise his average up ever so slightly. He's shooting 56% from the field, 90% from the free throw line, and 40% from 3, averaging 34, 6, and 3. So, needless to say, Damian Lillard goes absolutely ham against one of the best individual and team defenders in the league in Kyle Lowry, who has helped defense from DeMar DeRozan and a host of other guys. So
what's going on?
I have no clue because Dame, well, actually, I have a little bit of a clue. Dame kills guys who use a lot of strength. Where Dame struggles are the little quick guys that kind of are the water June bugs that get back and forth. The Chris Pauls, the Jeff Teagues. I mean, if you look at the guys who have constantly hounded him, Elfrid Payton, Oladipo, when he would pick him up when he was with Orlando, we saw a lot of that. So the smaller, quicker, twitchier guys are the ones that bother him. But the big, strong guys that like to muscle him, i.e. Kyle Lowry, that's where Dame likes to go ham.
But we just said that Dame's performance is not the reason the Blazers are losing. What is going on?
I just had to touch on that. So the counter to this is everyone else sucks. I don't know if they
not to put too fine a point on it.
I don't know if
that's some subtle analysis, Dan.
I don't know if they leave their games at customs or what, but like nobody else shows up in these games. I really don't understand it. For the CJ DeMar matchup, again, if you want to talk about individual matchups and what goes on consistently in their games, the one thing that I've found that ever bothers CJ, like anybody his size, is length. DeMar does have more length at the 2 position than a lot of guys. Not only that, DeMar is going to make you work on the other end. The only other guy I think who's going to make you work more consistently on all game long is Harden. So CJ's got to deal with that all game. And I think that that causes a drop off. And I think those two typically kind of cancel each other out, but DeMar decided he wanted to, I don't know, shoot the best from 3 he'd ever shot and take and make the most he'd ever made. So when that happens, coupling with everybody else sucking, there's just not a whole lot you can do.
I don't understand why it's that team, and I would like to understand what the matchup. And I'm wondering if it just is pure coincidence that they always hit each other at just the wrong time. I mean, I'm getting to the point where otherwise,
well, they were the ones on the back-to-back.
How could you explain it?
I mean, they were the ones on the back-to-back. So we're like, okay, the Toronto game, I kind of excuse because I said this on Twitter. The Blazers shot basically 50, 40, 80. They controlled turnovers for the most part. And they were still down 22 at the half. Like, under normal circumstances, you do those things, you have a 10 or 12-point lead. But, I mean, legitimately, that may have been Toronto's best offensive game of the season. I mean, from 3, they were nutty. They were 19 of 40. They were a franchise record 19 made threes. DeMar DeRozan hit the most threes he'd ever hit. Jonas Valanciunas, for the first time in his career, hit multiple threes in a game. I mean, that kind of stuff happens and that starts piling up. You're in for a rough time.
But why does that happen against Toronto when the Blazers all year have been effective at reducing the number of threes?
But where are they coming from? You got to consider the scouting report. And this is why I think this game was an isolated incident, as opposed to what had been the precedent in how Toronto had beat Portland previously. This was a 3 parade, but this is not a team, or I should say these are not players typically who one take threes, 2 make threes. So DeMar DeRozan does not take and make threes. I mean, he's been better about it this year than he has at any other point in his career, but he just went nuts. Jonas Valanciunas does not take and make threes. Now, he had it going inside and out, and him and Nurkic battle each other for long portions. But what does Nurkic not do on defense? He doesn't go out the 3-point line. So if a traditional big like a Marc Gasol or a Jonas Valanciunas decides that they're going to hang out there and pull Nurkic out,
he's ineffective
and hit the 3, that's a rough spot for Portland to be in, especially with a guy like DeMar DeRozan who his living is predicated on getting past that first level of defense, getting to the mid-range, or getting to the rim and drawing free throws. If Nurkic isn't there to push that away, your defense just falls apart.
Well, I think Toronto's a really interesting team this year. The coverage on them has been that, Masai Najiri said there was going to be a cultural reset, and instead of revamping the entire roster, he made a couple changes, recommitted to the guys that were the main guys, and said, we're going to change everything about how we do our work around here, which I think was really interesting to watch. And one of the things that they've changed is they've been moving the ball around a lot, and they have increased the number of threes used this year. I mean, I read all those articles. Didn't the Trailblazers read all those articles?
But you can read that
scouting report?
Yeah, you can read that, but you're not expecting it from DeMar and Jonas. And I think those are the two leading scorers of the game. So you had 35 from DeMar and 18 from Jonas. And when those two guys are breaking trends that heavily, it's really, really difficult. Because you especially guys like CJ and Dame, who know scouting reports. Like CJ knows, he's played DeMar plenty of times. He knows where DeMar wants to get to. He knows what he wants to take away. So he's favoring that right-hand drive. Because he knows a lot like CJ, he wants to get to that elbow. He wants to take that shot right there. He's not, in CJ's mind, he's not thinking DeMar's going to cross over, step back, and go to the three here, or catch and shoot. He's going to catch, pump, fake, and drive. So he's leaning back, waiting for that drive. And then when all of a sudden DeMar raises up and takes it, it's one of those, crap. And then he hits it. That's where you're just like, I can't. And when you stop trusting your instincts, that's when you're a half step behind. When you're a half step behind one of these guys, it's the same thing we see with CJ. If you're a half step behind him when he's on one, good luck.
Well, the Raptors ended up putting 130 up against the Blazers.
Season high for an opponent.
Yeah, then fast forward to this morning's game against the Celtics, where the Celtics they won by 1 point, put up 97 points, which is something that we had become a little bit more accustomed to, at least in the first part of the season. So what did we see in the Celtics game that was different from the Toronto game, or that could explain, what happened?
First of all, I think the defense was better. And in the Toronto game, I didn't think the defense was necessarily that bad. I just felt like, much like the Chicago game for Portland, they were just hit. Like when you start doing that enough, like the fabric in your mind just kind of melts. And like you try, you legitimately try, but you're just like, I can't make this happen. I can't make this work. This is like, no matter what I do, and it just becomes disheartening. I think the same approach was taken tonight with Boston, and Boston their resolve came from, again, canning a metric crap ton of threes. Like it wasn't like Portland wasn't contesting. Jason Tatum hit 2 threes where he had absolutely no business hitting them. And he's been, up until really the past month, he was leading the league in three-point percentage at like 48%. So the kid can shoot, but he hit some tonight, again, where you're just like, that is not a shot a rookie should hit. That's not a thing. So how do you kind of get around that? You hope the other guys struggle. And Terry Rozier struggled, but Jaylen Brown didn't. Al Horford didn't. I mean, the Celtics ended up hitting 15 threes. They shot 42% for 3. Like, even if you defend well and they hit, Terry Stotts said it the other night. The greatest equalizer in the NBA right now is a 3-point shot. If you can hit shots from that distance, that's, the Blazers had scored more points in the paint. They hit more free throws against the Raptors. They still got absolutely shellacked because of how many threes they gave up. It's the same thing tonight. What was
the rebounding like? I mean, because they were hitting when the other team is hitting so much, it's you don't get those rebounds because the ball's going in. But what was the matchup on that? Because as I believe going in, the Boston was a fantastic rebounding team. Do I have that right?
Yeah, they're a team rebounding team because Horford's not gobbling anything up. But again, when you have a pile of 6'7" to 6'9" guys, Tatum, Jaylen, Baines, Abdel Nader, Semi, Thies, Yabusele, all those guys, they all get after it. I mean, if you're looking at the box score, 10, 8, 8, 6, 6, 6, 5. Those are your rebounding numbers. And Terry Rozier.
46 to 51 in favor of Boston.
Boston won out on the boards, and Rozier's maybe the best, if not the second best, rebounding guard in the league right now, if you look at like his per 36 numbers. I think only Westbrook is ahead of him. I mean,
he's getting every rebound.
And he gets
by pushing everybody out of the way.
He gets all the uncontested
teammates.
Yeah, he gets all the uncontested rebounds because they know he's triple-double hunting.
So I thought
it's
for
difficult
this
to deal
game,
with.
I thought this game, the Blazers I didn't think they played terrible against Boston. I think they just couldn't score. And I think to me, this game really stood out and helped me see or showed me that there's just Blazers can play defense and they can play offense, and sometimes they can play them both really well. But it's like after a team gets a certain amount of length on them, they can't do both.
They can play offense and defense at the same time, but then they need like a 3-game smoke break. All right, we really went for it there. We played them both for one game. Time for a cigarette, and they just disappear, and then they come. They don't play offense or defense for a game, and then
I don't think you're giving them enough credit. I think you're being too hard on them. I think I don't know
personally, and I know this is going to sound wild. In today's NBA, I think I would rather have the team that plays with the top 7 or 8 offense than the top 7 or 8 defense.
We need to write that down and put that in stone.
As weird as
at some point,
as weird as that
they're going to go back. Yeah. I mean, it.
Well, I should say that
things
with
we
this
saw at the
team.
beginning of this. We saw this at the beginning of the season. We saw the Blazers playing good defense at the beginning of the season, and when they started playing good offense again, everybody was like, "Oh, thank goodness, offense is back."
It's much more enjoyable
it's
to
much
watch.
Prettier and fun to watch.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, especially with this team, because their offense is limited when they get down into the nitty gritty. It's Dame and CJ, those are the guys that you're counting on night in, night out. And when you play teams like Boston, or really a lot of teams around the league nowadays, because Portland's, they're mired in this weird spot, and this is why this is kind of the theme of the theme of the podcast here. They don't have a ton of those effective 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" guys on their roster. Now, granted, I say this as Harkless had his second best game of the season. I'd say the Lakers game was his best one, but I'm sitting here watching the Twitter feed. Harkless needs to play more. Stotts is crazy for not playing him. Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, but guys, we went through this once already. He started 20 games and he couldn't hit a shot to save his life. Where were you campaigning for him then?
Well,
So
it
weird.
was. I think a lot of it was just good to see Mo Harkless out there doing stuff. I mean, because when he comes out there, his minutes are so hit and miss that we know that if he steps on the court, he has to produce immediately so that he can stay out on the court. And sometimes he doesn't, and then he just goes back to the bench. So I think part of it was that people were just really glad to see Mo taking advantage of the minutes that he was getting and producing in them.
Yeah, good Harkless is a good player who is worth more than his contract. But we so rarely see good Harkless that in the long run, it just doesn't work out. I mean, I don't expect him to hit 5 of 5 from 3. Go 2 of 5 from 3 on average. You give me 2 of 5 from 3 and you take 7 or 8 shots a night. Give me those.
I think that's it. I think it's the taking of the shots.
Yeah, give me 8. I'm okay with him getting
difference.
8 shots, because if he's taking 5 threes and then getting 1 fast break opportunity and 2 cuts to the rim, that's a good distribution for me. That's cool. Give me 11 points, 5 rebounds, and a steal while playing effective defense within the team scheme. Don't give me the aloof, I don't care, I'm going to go over here and be a hipster Maurice Harkless in the corner, because that dude is just miserable. I hate seeing him even on the floor.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I mean, why people were happy to see him out there producing. But do you remember, during the preseason and, when they were signing the two-way guys, and it seemed like every time they added somebody new to the roster, it was a 6'5" shooting guard. And we were like, oh my gosh, we have so many 6'5" shooting guards. I'm really on this length thing right now. I'm starting to come over to your side about the just needing taller players who can see.
Length matters.
What?
I said when all else is equal, length matters. This is
Right,
this was the discussion we were having on Twitter when talking about the upcoming NBA draft. People were like, I don't understand how you could take DeAndre Ayton. I'm like, you guys gotta wrap your head around this, because DeAndre Ayton is a 7-footer, yes, but he's built like David Robinson and moves like a gazelle. Like, you cannot replicate that in the NBA right now. There are not guys built like that. It's basically like taking Joel Embiid and making him incredibly nimble and graceful. I mean, for anybody who hasn't seen Ayton, he's a physical freak unlike anything has been around in college in 25, 30 years. And
is he hardy?
Is he what?
Is he hardy? I mean, is he fragile or is he hardy?
No, he's thick as a brick. I mean, he's thick,
he hasn't
tough,
been injured,
built.
I mean?
No.
Has he had an injury history?
No, none of that at all. I mean, and this is not an 18-year-old. Like, 18-year-olds should not look like this. So again, when I go to the argument of should I take a Doncic or Marvin Bagley, like, yeah, those guys are great and all, but in the long run, if you're asking me how to beat a team like the Warriors, are you going to try to outshoot them when they have two of the greatest shooters of all time, or are you going to try and outbig them? Me, I'm going to try and outbig them, because my offense is going to be find Steph Curry. And I'm going to have my 6'8", 6'9", and 7-foot dudes find Steph Curry and whoop him on every possession, because that's how you win. That's how the Cavaliers won a title.
Okay, deep breath, Dan. You're getting super excited about this, and I'm glad that you're passionate about this. But I have a couple of other players I want to ask you about, and then I want to go to something else that's going to get you excited, which is trade talk. Woo-hoo! So bear with me. My one question I had about the Boston game, and it does kind of feed into the next topic, what the trade talk is. I want to know how you felt about the way the Blazers adjusted without Shabazz, because there has been a lot of talk about, during with trade season or with free agency coming up, how the Blazers, might not have Shabazz in the future. So how did you feel about how the Blazers adjusted to that for this one game? How would you think they would adjust to do it in the future? Because, I mean, before Shabazz really started playing the last, 20 games or so, the Blazers always relied on that whole keep Dame or CJ on the floor, one of them at all times, and they wouldn't use the traditional backup point guard. Shabazz has been able to do it. But tonight they didn't have him. Did you notice anything?
Yeah, I mean, let's go ahead and preface it this way. I'm going to miss Shabazz. I'm going to miss him because he's going to get paid. I just, unless Portland does something absolutely wild at the deadline that frees up money, and the Blazers see him as an incredibly valuable piece going forward that they can afford, I just don't see Shabazz with Portland past this year.
It feels like one of those things where it's
Patty Mills all over
again. He's a really nice to have. It's like so great to have him, but when you prioritize all of the other things on the roster, he's just, like we were just talking about.
Do you
want
another 6-foot dude or another 6'7" dude? Yeah,
exactly. And it's and it's made extra difficult by the fact that Damian just falls hard for every one of his teammates. Every one of his teammates he just loves,
and he wants them to get paid. He
loves them, each one of them, so much. Yep. Exactly. And so you can see that it hurts him when they move on, but you also know that he's super happy for him too. But yeah, I don't know. The other personnel question I had is that I believe we heard that Caleb Swanigan will be joining the team again
tomorrow. He's supposed to meet him in Detroit.
Yeah. So what do you expect from that move?
Okay. So Mike Richmond called it out when Wade Baldwin was called up that, hey, don't make a big deal out of this. When Wade Baldwin was called up, because basically it amounts to him fulfilling his 45-day two-way contract limitation. And again, shout out to Mike Richmond, who's no longer with Oregonian.
No kidding, man.
That one sucked because Mike's one of the real ones. Yeah. So for any of you guys out there, stay tuned to Mike, because I'm sure he'll be continuing to do good things. But
so he said not to make a big deal.
This was the Wade
Baldwin coming back,
and that to me
is that because he played his? Well, no, he gets to play 45 games in the NBA.
45 days in the NBA, correct? So Then this is the confusion. There was a tweet that was put out that said that he had 45 games in the G League. If you had 45 games or 45 days in the G League, they'd be running out of players left, right, and center. You can play as many days and games as you want to in the G League.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
you have a limit of 45 in the NBA.
Yes.
So anyway, what do you think it means about for Swanigan coming up?
And that's the thing. The Wade Baldwin one,
means
no
nothing?
big deal. The Wade Baldwin one was, hey, I can fill this role, and the Blazers have said, but as far as the G League goes, they are totally cool and good, and they'd rather have guys that are part of the organization kind of in the fold and be around the team. So that makes sense. Cool, great, Grant. Caleb Swanigan getting called up when right now there's
they're gonna play him.
Zero chance of him being played because of the way that the roster is. Makes me believe that ding, ding. Yes, they're going to play him because they're going to be short of big man body.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's the only reason you call him back right now. That or his agent's like, hey, he's balling out in the G League. He's doing things down here. I think you need to give him another shot in the league. Those are the only two things I see.
I'm so glad that he had that time in the G League. I mean, we haven't seen really what it's going to produce for him in the NBA, but like I've said before, he just strikes me as a guy who needs to play, and the fact that he has been balling out in the G League. I'm trying to find what his stats are.
Last I checked, it was like 18 and 13
for him.
Like he's been an absolute monster. Basically, what he did at Purdue against bigger and better competition.
Right, and I think that's exactly what he needed for his development. And so I hope, whatever. Well, actually, let's go ahead and lead into the trade talk then. So it sounds like you think that the reason Caleb Swanigan's coming back is because they're going to need his body. What role do you see him playing? And then we'll transition into the trade talk. But how do you think he'll be utilized on the floor?
He's going to be the last big off the bench. That's what I see. But when I say that,
center or power forward or either?
I think they'll have him more as the center, but they'll use him kind of like a stretch. I think offensively they're going to try and position him further away from the basket. I think they're going to try to use him like they tried to use Myers. When I say the last big off the bench,
having him stretch a little bit.
Well, when I say the last big off the bench, though, I'm not saying the last dude off the bench. I'm talking about the last dude off the bench in the rotation.
The rotation, okay.
Yeah. I think Ed and Noah are both going to be gone. So I think we could.
You're breaking a lot of hearts with that there, Dan.
I know.
I know you're already a heartbreaker, but saying that Ed is going to be gone, that's a real heartbreaker.
And here's the bigly news, at least if you believe me. I think the Blazers are pretty much all in on DeAndre Jordan. I would say. It sounds
like they're trying it anyway.
Yeah, I would say that there's a good chance of that trade going down on deadline day. From everything that I've heard, from everything that I've read, and people that I've talked to, that's what sounds like could happen. I think it's crazy that we're at this point. Right now, because basically if that deal goes down, there's almost no way Yusuf Nurkic isn't attached. And to be at that point 6 months from, Nurkic fever, I guess we're a full year now almost from the beginning of Nurkic fever. But 6 months removed from the peak ride of it is wild.
Right. Well, so a couple observations, and then I want to get a little bit deeper and ask you some more specific questions about this DeAndre to Portland rumor and how it all might work out. But one thing I noticed over in the last two games, and maybe this is completely, laughable, but I'm wondering how much players get stressed out about trade deadline time. And if there's actual talk, I wonder how much that affects their playing time. Have you ever heard people talk about this? Do you know if anyone's made those connections before?
So for everybody else who wants to kind of see a public view of this, Evan Turner did a deal for NBC Sports. They put out, I think a week ago. I think it was like a tagged Instagram or sponsored post or something like that.
Right.
But he talked about exactly this. About how the trade from Philly to Boston went down and how he had practice that day. It was deadline day, and how he said, I just want to sleep in. I don't want to go to practice because if you trade me after I gave you a full practice, I'm going to be pissed. So he went and basically he practiced, and then he stayed at the arena or stayed at the facility, and like it was like last minute deadline deal, and he got a phone call after not really hearing anything that he got traded, and he went into like all the personal side of it, and he gave a shout out to Sam Hinkie for saying, hey, Sam was just trying to treat me right before he got out, kind of a deal, and was trying to take care of me. And then I went to Indiana, and they blame me for everything. You know, if you haven't seen it, go check it out because it's a really cool and insightful clip of like. I think a lot of people, and I get caught up in this too. When you talk about trades, these are people's livelihoods. They've got wives, they've got kids, they have to uproot. Everybody's like, oh, they make millions of dollars. Guess what, people? It still sucks to leave everything that you've known for the last few years and change everything. Because a lot of these guys, especially if they have families, they're moving to the new city by themselves. And that's not a fun thing to do.
I remember, I think it was Jason Quick wrote a really interesting in-depth article about Brian Roberts. I think it was Jason Quick. I'm not quite sure. But when Brian Roberts was traded to Portland at the trade deadline a couple of years ago, it was a really in-depth about, you know, I think he got like traded twice in a day or something.
Yeah, he did.
And so he went from one team to another, and he had kids, and he had to figure out what to do with the family. But what I'm getting at, though, is just the stress of the deadline approaching.
Any of these guys,
do you think that gets into their heads?
Yes. Any of these guys save like the legit, no doubt superstars that won't be traded.
Like Damian and CJ are probably not worried.
Yeah, but Ed, you saw in his article from Quick a week ago. He's like, yeah, I'm preparing for it. I know it's on their mind. They know he's got baby twins. That's got to be on his mind. So in all these guys, I kind of joked about it, but Dane Carbaugh basically had the same feeling too. Yusuf Nurkic played like the first half of this game against the Celtics like he did not want to be a Clipper. Like there's no way on this earth that Yusuf Nurkic has not seen those rumors. There's no
the DeAndre Jordan. Okay.
Yeah. And he's a smart young man. He can put two and two together. That there's not enough big men on this roster and money available in order for him and DeAndre Jordan to both play. Otherwise, if there were, we'd be looking at DeAndre and Yusuf like we're looking at Jokic and Yusuf. And that worked out splendid.
Let's turn to the rumors about DeAndre to Portland. And one thing that I've learned over the last couple of years, mostly from, you know, reading Blazers Edge and talking to people on Twitter, is that, you know, as locked down as Portland is, if something does get out, it's a highly likely scenario because they are very, very locked down.
If there's smoke,
there's actual, like, Mark Stein has actually, you know, suggested that this is a good. It was Stein and Windhorst.
Yep, Stein, Windhorst, and somebody else. I can't remember what the other one was.
They've all are talking about like this is a possibility.
Yeah, these are real guys. These are not the fake, you know, aggregator weird sites.
Right, somebody putting it on the trade machine and tweeting it.
Yeah, exactly. So
my question is, how do logistically? So DeAndre is in the end. Is he going to be a total free agent at the end of this year, or is he restricted?
No, he has an opt-in clause.
Okay, so how does all of that? So tell me how all his contract would work.
Okay, so
hypothetically, how would this work?
He's got an opt-in. Let me pull up the exact. I think it's $22 million. Is his opt-in
around 20?
I'm double checking it right now, so I get kind of close because that helps kind of put everything into perspective.
Right, because the Blazers have about $3 million over the luxury tax line, right?
Yes, so he's 22.6 right now. His opt-in is 24.1. So that's what. And I've heard some people say that
he can opt in for 24.1.
Correct. That is a player option. That is not a team option. The thing is,
so he could come to Portland and say, "I want to stay, and it's going to cost you $24.1 million."
Yes, and here's the other thing.
And then Portland has three guys making upwards of $20 million.
Correct. And here's the shtick here. If they trade for him, whether or not he opts in or not, they will have his bird rights.
Can you explain a little bit more about how bird rights work?
It's really, really, really wonky. Because he still has the option. That's what allows him to have the bird rights, so that you would use that would allow the Blazers to go over a certain amount when it came to re-signing him. That's the bird kicker.
Rights basically say someone's been on this contract for a really long time, and so
or with a certain team.
Right, so you can go over the cap to keep him.
Correct.
And bird rights can travel with a player.
Correct. So there's a lot of things that go on with bird rights, and they're very important when you start looking at this stuff. So you can't blanket say, oh, if he doesn't opt in, it's a waste for Portland. It's not necessarily a waste. Here's the kicker with DeAndre. There's not actually a trade kicker, so let me go ahead and preface that, because kicker's another word.
Here's the thing.
Yeah, here's the thing. There's a couple different ways that this can go. The opt-in clause, it scares a lot of people. But if you're DeAndre Jordan, this is what you have to weigh. The immediacy of the $24 million or the opportunity for your last long-term contract. Because he's going to be – he's either 28 or just turned 29, and he's going to be 29 in his next contract. I'm trying to pull up his birthday.
It seems like a really nice situation for him, because everyone's talking about how there's so many centers on the market right now. So if
this is an
opportunity.
opportunity.
Like $24 million, I'll take it.
That's the thing.
Let's
It's
just
like,
stay.
You know what? It's worth it for me to get this, but he'd be playing with fire, because as a big man who's very athletic, and he's a guy who hasn't missed games. If he does hit that wall, that 30-year-old wall, which I don't necessarily think he's going to be that guy. I think he's, well, yes, he's athletic, and yes, he relies on it, and yes, he plays above the rim. I don't see him as a guy who, because he hasn't in his career, is notoriously injury-ridden or injury-bugged. He's not Blake. He's not Blake Griffin, so he doesn't rack those up. And I think there's something to be said for his durability, and I think that alone might not be enough to scare Portland off and wouldn't allow them to invest in him. Now, as far as moving for him, and we've already alluded to, Jusuf Nurkic is going to be the piece in here. Now, in order to make this work, because again, whether or not he's opts in or not, you still have to account for the $22.6 million incoming. Right. Jusuf Nurkic is $4.5 million, I think.
Yeah, that's like a pennies.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and pull up the ye old trade machine and look at the math here real quick to essentially.
I don't even think we need to get into a lot of details. We know that there's a couple guys that are worth $10 million. But like, who is worth something to the Clippers based on what you've seen about how the Clippers are now rebuilding their team?
And that's why I think the reason we're not hearing about anything else right now is that Portland and Los Angeles are working out a third team, because Nurkic makes sense for what the Clippers are trying to do. Young, talented. They may get him even on a discount because, again, we've talked about the centers that are available and Nurkic's inconsistency in youth. So they could get him a little bit cheaper than normal. The other thing that I think is probably going to accommodate that trade is Portland's first-round pick. Now, I am not in line with that. I do not want to give away a first-round pick unless Evan Turner is attached to it. Okay. Now, I don't think anybody, even with a first-round pick, is going to take Evan Turner. The only thing that I would suggest that go along with this then is Maurice Harkless. Because Portland's not going to take on Myers Leonard too. They're not going to take Jusuf Nurkic and Myers Leonard. They're not going to take.
Oh, you mean Clippers?
I'm sorry. Yeah, they aren't going to take Nurkic and Leonard because they just traded for Boban. Like, they're not going to have like five centers.
They don't need another.
Yeah, so they're not going to take another big guy. So the guy that I lock in
unless they feel like they could stretch. Do you think they could do that? Do you think they would consider that? Because he's got way too much left on his contract to stretch.
Yeah, I mean, he's got $30 million. If you're over 3 years, that's just too much.
That's too much. Yeah. So maybe over after 2 years though, it might not be so bad. Anyway, I'm sorry.
No.
Continue.
It's a valid question to ask because you have to consider all things right now with how things are playing out. So for me, I insert Harkless into this, and to sweeten the deal. I think they send Napier out. Now, this is why I think a third team is going to get involved. If you look at the Clippers roster, their roster construction, point guard, Austin Rivers, basically a point guard. Lou Williams, point guard. Teodosic, point guard. Patrick Beverly. I mean, Joan Evans is on their roster. Point guard. They have like 5 point guards on their roster. Yeah. I think a third
that
team.
5-guard lineup like Steph Curry's going to do in the All-Star game.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a third team gets involved, and they get Napier and Harkless. Basically, the price for taking on Harkless is Napier and his RFA rights, because he's going to be a restricted free agent up for his first real contract. And again, you may on the open market in any other year, Shabazz could get like 12 to 14 million. I think in this market, he gets that close to MLE $8 to $10 million range.
Okay, this is a really terrible thing to say, and I can't believe I'm saying it. And this I will blame on you.
Yeah.
But do you think it is likely that a team that might take on Harkless and Shabazz are somebody like Orlando or Chicago?
Those
or somebody
are the two
who
exact
is,
teams. Those
not trying to win right now.
No, the 2 exact teams that I'm looking at are Orlando and Chicago. And the reason I hesitate on Orlando is, guess who had Harkless and Napier?
Right, exactly.
Orlando.
Oh, that's right. They both of them had him. I forgot.
So if it's those guys that are going out, I hesitate to say Orlando. Now the difference here is that if Orlando was the third,
office,
well, here's the thing: is if Orlando is the team, what I could see happening is players that are currently Clippers going to Orlando.
So some of their guards going over to Orlando.
Correct. So say a Patrick Beverly goes to Orlando, and they make room for Napier there. And that's why I think there's the machinations that are happening right now are trying to figure out like where those guys end up going. But even if you put Harkless, Nurkic, Napier in there, that's still
is that
not
even close to the right amount of money.
That's still not enough. You have to put more in the pile basically to make this happen.
So it's key that it is Turner and not Harkless, because if it was Turner,
it can be
work?
those guys. But the problem is you need to make another deal first. And here's my conspiracy theory, foil hat on too tight thoughts. So DeAndre Jordan, for the first time in his career, signed an agent, or the first time in recent history, signed an agent in December named Jeff Schwartz. Do you know who else Jeff Schwartz represents?
I do. He represents definitely some Trailblazers. I'm trying to remember. Is it Damian?
Nope. It is Noah Vonleh.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. That's who it is. I knew it was a Blazer.
So
very different Blazer from Dame.
Remind me again, who's a Blazer most likely to be traded at the deadline? Right. So I think there are some things going on behind the scenes that Noah Vonleh and has been tagged in recently in rumors as somebody the Blazers are shopping quite hard right now. If they can basically move him out for a late first or a second, or basically swap RFAs with another team that might fit, that would need that kind of guy.
Let me bring up somebody who hasn't been brought up in this discussion. And like, is Pat Connaughton anybody that
I think a lot of teams want him. No, I think he's a guy that has value.
For this particular thing, he doesn't make enough money to really be.
I don't think Portland wants to let him go. I don't think Portland can afford to let a shooter go right now.
I mean, if he was making a bunch of money and they could get a bunch of money, somebody who was making a bunch of money who had a high value, but he's not making enough, right?
Yeah, if he was a sweetener on a bigger deal, I think Portland could go that way. But if they're moving for DeAndre Jordan, I mean, if you're talking about like non-shooters, you don't get any non-shootery than DeAndre Jordan. Don't get me wrong; he's going to lead the NBA in field goal percentage for the third straight year, and that's going to be a record. Nobody's ever done that before. Right. Like within 5 feet, he's a
shooters out.
Yeah, but you can't. You have to put floor spacers around this guy. So
can we pivot to how he would work on the Trailblazers on the actual floor?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me go ahead and tie up this trade machine talk right here. So basically, the way I see this going is that Portland moves a combination of Harkless or Leonard and heaven forbid, Evan Turner, if they can find somebody to take him with a first-round pick, the sweetener's Napier, the big prize here, obviously, is Yusuf Nurkic. That brings DeAndre. And then a side deal moves Noah Vonleh and maybe an end-of-bench guy like Jake Layman to free up the right amount of money to get that $3 million or so to get under that line to make the moves, the DeAndre move necessary. And at that same point, bring in a restricted free agent on a lower tier deal, or a guy that has one more year left to kind of prolong the process. So you had the staggering of deals that Portland would like to have, as opposed to everybody coming up at the same time. Because we've gone through this process before where everybody comes up at the same time. You see the Celtics right now shopping Marcus Smart because they know they're not going to be able to afford him when his free agency hits, because they have so many guys that they drafted in the same period. Now, is DeAndre fitting? That's the fun one. Like, for you though, are you in on the DeAndre train? You're on the DeAndre train. You're riding that one.
Okay, Dan, if you don't know why I want DeAndre Jordan, then you have not listened to a word I've said for the last 6 months, and I'm hanging up on you. Why do I want DeAndre Jordan on this team, Dan? A lot rides on you answering this correctly. All the
dunks and all the alley-oops.
Oh, good. You just saved yourself.
I knew
you got that one wrong. You're in so much trouble.
Trust me, and I've seen people that have wanted to counter. I don't think DeAndre Jordan is the answer. But from my own selfish personal view, adding DeAndre Jordan while moving out a bad contract and not sacrificing a ton and getting a talent like DeAndre in return isn't a bad thing, first of all. Second of all, you're not giving up CJ to do it. So everybody who's talking about moving CJ for DeAndre Jordan, please and kindly shut up.
Don't say that, Dan. That sounds mean.
It's awful. Like, people who want to equate those two, like, we're going to have to give up CJ to get him. No, you're not. Just calm down. That's not a thing.
You have shown us a different path, but let's not just pile on everybody.
I'm going to pile on those people. Ideas. You're crazy.
Well, I'm going to defend them. I'm going to jump in front of your giant piling on and be like, just chill.
But as far as from, again, my own selfish point of view, this is all me. Give me entertainment. Watching DeAndre dunk the ball endlessly would be great. Hell, watching Damian Lillard yell at DeAndre Jordan at the end of a game as he holds the ball as the clock expires, as awful and frustrating as that would have been to be on the other side of that, entertainment value is very high. Damian Lillard would not do that
to DeAndre Jordan.
Scream and yell at him and jump up and down and shoot.
Right. So that's why I think that this would be a good deal for DeAndre, and also why I think that he would lean towards staying should this happen, because I think he'll be treated really well, and he'll really one of the things that the Blazers are known for is immediately treating new teammates like they've been there the whole time. And I think DeAndre will, find people who aren't going to yell and scream at him and jumping down on his back. They're going to encourage him, and they're going to expect a lot from him, but they're not going to treat him like he's been. And we know DeAndre has a history of being really close with his teammates. Like there was the whole thing about him almost going to Dallas and then the team coming and, staying with him so that he wouldn't change his mind again. But no, he seems like a guy for whom the people around him are super, super important. And I think,
and remember, he's Damian's mom.
What?
He's Damian's mom in all the commercials.
Commercials,
Baby Dame.
So they already know each other. But anyway, I think this would be a good fit for DeAndre, somebody who I worry might have a harder time adjusting in other places in different situations. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, honestly, that was, again, that was kind of going to my next point, is I think DeAndre in the long term could fit in really well here, because if you were going to build a guy in a lab to play behind Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum defensively, he would look like DeAndre Jordan. 7 foot tall, freakishly long arms, the ability to switch all across the board, come out to the 3-point line, and be a ferocious and intimidating shot blocker. Like, DeAndre Jordan is a lot like Rudy Gobert or Anthony Davis in the sense that he's an intimidating presence in the paint that makes you hesitate and pause before going up with your shot. You don't go up as strong because you don't want to see your shot sent into the 13th row. And pairing that
he just
behind
has
those
3
guys
inches
is
of
huge.
diameter all the way around on both of those two guys you just mentioned too.
Yeah, and he has hands and palms like the size of pumpkins. I mean, the guy is like measurables. The only guy that I think in the NBA that compares is Giannis. Like as far as like ticking off like the freaky measurements, DeAndre's right up there with him. He doesn't need the ball, which is fantastic if you're thinking about the way Portland plays right now. Defensively, he fits right in. Your scheme's the same, except it can be more aggressive, which is I think something Terry Stotts has toyed with in the past. It just hasn't really worked because he hasn't had the personnel to do it. The only one close was LaMarcus, and he was. It's kind of funny. People wanted to bag on LaMarcus for a long time because of this, that, and the other. He was one of the best and continues to be one of the best for a guy his size and coming out, switching, and defending on the perimeter. DeAndre Jordan is like the apex of that. So adding that ability,
So he
to the
does
team
come out on the perimeter.
Yeah, I mean, we saw
what
it.
you're saying.
We saw it a week ago. Not even a week ago when Portland played Los Angeles. CJ McCollum played like crap because he had DeAndre Jordan on his face the entire time. Shooting over that man on the perimeter is next to impossible. So, and offensively, the gravity is very different from a Yusuf Nurkic. And here's where Nurkic has, because I don't want this to sound like I'm crapping on Nurkic, because I really do. I'm a big Nurkic supporter. I love his post game. I love what his potential could be. The big difference between the two, obviously, is that you can throw Nurkic the ball in the paint or at the high post and say, go get your own shot. If you do that with DeAndre Jordan, you are not a very smart individual, because that's just that's not his game. And I'm not going to fault him for that because he knows who he is. Who he is throw that ball within 3 feet of the rim, I will go get it and dunk it. Or I will catch it bouncing off the rim or off the backboard and dunk it. Like the one thing that people are going to have to get used to is the fact that the Blazers would become a team that dunks the ball again. And we really haven't had that in, since Clyde
Plumlee.
Yeah, well, I mean, Plumlee was a solo guy.
Plumlee's backwards dunks.
Yes, but I mean, as far as like a guy who dunks night in, night out, you're looking at like
as it being a feature of the offense as opposed
Clyde,
to a bug.
Yeah, a guy that's just going to consistently just look to pack the ball like you look at Nurkic and you're like, dunk that. You don't ever have to tell DeAndre Jordan to dunk that. I mean, that's not a thought that ever crosses your mind. And I think that would be a major shift for what Portland wants or what Portland could or should do.
So you've definitely painted a very vibrant picture of what could happen. You know how I am always superstitious and think now that we've talked about it, it pretty much guarantees it's not going to happen.
It just went up in flames.
It just went up in flames because we talked about it. But it was a really good thought experiment. And that's so much of what, sometimes to me, it gets frustrating to listen to all of the trade talk because I just think, come on, can't we just concentrate on what's in front of us and what's on the team, who's on the team right now, and then just see what happens, leave it to the front office to see what's going to happen. But to also, on the other hand, trade talk, I think, is really good for thought experiment because it helps you and it forces me to investigate how the other teammates and how the other players on the team play. And it makes me think about some things that I wouldn't have thought about. So
a player on an opposing team may be not as valuable to us as Portland people, but to their team, it'd be worth an arm and a leg, and it kind of gives you this understanding of, like, I've seen some Clippers people, like, I asked a couple Clippers people, like, what would be fair value in return for DeAndre? To them, he means everything right now with Blake gone and Chris Paul gone. So they were like, value-wise, CJ, Collins, and a first. And I'm like, okay. Like, no, fam. That's not a thing. You're not getting 2 first-round picks and CJ freaking McCollum for 29-year-old DeAndre Jordan with 1 year left on his contract. But like you said, it's a thought experiment in how these guys go about valuing their own guys. And I think that, while not always an accurate representation of what a front office is thinking, the fan base, like, you can't trade a guy with a lot of fan base cachet unless the return is commensurate. Golden State, like, had the Monte trade not worked out as favorably as it did, let's say Steph's ankles continue to be rickety. Like, I mean, take all the other stuff away. How would that fan base have reacted to that team? Because Monte was beloved. So I think that's something that Portland has to consider with the way that they look at Nurkic and the way Los Angeles is looking at DeAndre Jordan.
Well, and I think it's almost like the plan that you laid out. It's almost like it makes too much sense. Because, well, you know what we always, I mean, we're always invariably after a trade sitting there going, oh my God, so-and-so got shellacked, you know, because it's like, it always feels like one team, it always feels like it's really lopsided. And then what invariably happens is then, you know, it sort of ends up evening out, like, you know, with Paul George versus Oladipo and Sabonis. You know, each team is going to go for something that they need for, you know, for their own thing, and they're not going to be the same. So it's almost like what we've just talked about and what's laid out makes too much sense. And so, you know, what we're actually going to happen, you know, who's actually coming to Portland, you know, who actually knows. Like last night, I can't remember who it was that I said to my husband was actually going to be the Clipper that came to Portland, but it was definitely somebody that I hadn't heard of. And it was like, yeah, it's like all this talk about this and we're actually going to get, you know, so-and-so. But anyway, it'll be interesting to find out. There was actually a good, the Woj podcast that came out recently had, let's see, it's Bobby Marks is the ESPN front office insider, right? I always get Sean Marks and Bobby Marks mixed up.
Yes, the Marks brothers.
Right. So, but they had Bobby, I think, talking about the trade deadline and how things are changing this year because it is moved up so much and does not take place over the All-Star break. And I think that's going to be like, we're in for either a completely, like, we're either going to be in the thing where we're like on the edge of our seat and never quite get satisfied for the next 5 days, or
I think it's going to be last minute.
Wild.
I think, and I've given Olshey plenty of criticism for a lot of things. His deadline deals and his the middling acquisitions have all been, I think, done very well. The free agency stuff, obviously, I'm not a fan. But I think this is a genuine opportunity of what I've been screaming for what feels like a couple years, and that's swinging for the fences, making a legit home run play. Getting DeAndre Jordan, for those that don't believe so, is a home run play. That is a big-time move. This is a multi-time All-Star who would be able to be a plug-and-play kind of guy. And if there is mutual interest between the two, could help elevate Portland and not into championship contending tier, but I think into that next tier where they're like, they're not quite a top 3 or 4, but on the right day and on the right matchup, those games we talked about to open the podcast with should win games become much easier should win games. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know me, I'm not going to complain about how things are right now because I take one game at a time and, you know, they'll be down by 16 points and you've sat across from me while I'm saying they've got plenty of time. Just get it to 15. Just get it to 10.
And I'm sitting there tapping my watch, say, wrap it up, pull them.
You know that. However, I certainly wouldn't be sad if they became a team that was like regularly 50 games. And I know that for people like you who enjoy excellence so much, that's not enough. But for me, I would be okay with that. I have one more question.
It's a step forward, in my opinion, though. 50 games is better than the 41, you know, that they've been fooling around with for now. What's going to be 3 years?
Yeah, 50 games I think would make a big difference, and that would mean we had a lot of games where we had a lot of fun. Does Neil Olshey's connection to the Clippers? Do you think that helps this?
Yes.
Do you think it has anything?
It matters.
Do you think it does?
It matters on 3 levels. It matters with the Clippers. It matters with DeAndre Jordan. He drafted him, and it matters with Jeff Schwartz.
I was wondering if he did. Okay.
Yeah, no, and it matters with Jeff Schwartz because he's an agent that he's worked with. He works with them now with Noah Vonleh.
He's got solid relationships on all of those.
Like I said, my tinfoil hat was going pretty hard a couple days ago when I started like looking at all the different things that are out there. And I'm like, okay, this because if you look at Neil Olshey's moves over the past couple of years, what have they been? They've been his guys with agents he knows, with teams and GMs he knows. Who is he more familiar with in the league?
For sure. Yeah, I mean Orlando and Cleveland have been his main guys, and now their people are gone.
They're under new management. So who does he go to? You go to your old stomping grounds in Los Angeles with a player that you drafted with an agent you have a relationship with. Like,
right, and they seem amenable right now.
Right? I mean, like I said, if you're ticking all the boxes for the Neil O'Shea acquisition list, you're hitting Yahtzee right now. Mm-hmm. So that's what kind of along with some other things that I've heard. This is a big time move that looks like it's going to come together.
So Wesley Johnson or Sam Decker were the guys that I was saying that we're going to end up with after all of this.
Yeah.
But both of those guys are over 6'7". So
yeah, they're both awkward and have been underwhelming. But I mean, that's really what Portland collects at the small forward position. So again, that wouldn't necessarily surprise me. If you look at the Clippers, feel like they have a ton of those guys.
Smoke and mirrors, like get us all thinking one direction, and then what they've really been working on is going to be something else entirely.
Yeah, but like you said, something you touched on earlier in the show here is that Portland does not let things leak unless, number one, they want them to leak. And from what I've heard, none of this stuff that's come out has been from Portland. It's been from the other side. And people know typically, as far as like dealing with Portland, if you leak too much, the Blazers disappear because they want to control everything. They want to control the narrative. They want to control how the trade is shaped. They want to control the back and forth, and they do that by limiting the flow of information. I mean, whether you like it or not, that's how they conduct business. That's how Neil O'Shea operates. I can certainly see the pluses and the negatives to it, but. In this case, it serves as a barometer for what appears to be cooking.
Mm-hmm. Well, by the time we speak again next weekend,
it will be the end of the trade deadline.
Potentially,
we're going to do a trade deadline podcast. I mean, that's going to end up happening. We're like the as far as like anniversary and special event type podcasts. That's Dave and I in the past have done one. The 2 years that we'd had before when I was around. So I would suspect a emergency pod as soon as that Woj announcement comes. Because bare minimum, even if it's not DeAndre, Portland's making a deal. Like it's happening. So
it'll be the emergency Sam Decker podcast.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be like Noah Vonleh for Sam Decker. And you're like, what the hell just happened?
And everyone's going to think I'm clairvoyant.
Yeah, Dan said DeAndre. That's not DeAndre. Yeah, so I'm sorry if it doesn't happen, but my spidey sense is leaning heavily towards DeAndre Jordan. I don't usually let myself get excited
how it could make sense. Because I mean, the big thing is like with DeAndre making so much money, it's like, wait, how do the Blazers make that work with him coming in with so much money?
It has a chance to be win-win, even if DeAndre leaves. This is what we talked about with Carmelo Anthony. Like, even if he leaves, Portland's going to get off of one of their bad contracts. I would rather him stay, clearly. But in the end, you're looking at it, and it's not the absolute worst as far as what you would have to do. I think they're going to get it. There's going to be DeAndre, and I think in that trade, one other wing asset comes back to Portland. I don't think it's going to be anything special, but I think there's going to be somebody else there on the younger side, not real young, but 23 to 25, 26, right in that range, the timeline, so to speak, along with Damian, and I think that's ultimately where they end up.
What if they threw in Austin Rivers?
I would become a Sonics fan.
I just had that. Anyway, okay, I don't want to get us all derailed on that. We should probably start wrapping this up here. You got anything else you want to say right now about the trade deadline coming up? Anything else to watch for?
No, I think those are the big ones. Honestly, I think DeAndre is going to be the biggest move made. I don't think the Thunder are going to move Paul George. So,
yeah,
I think DeAndre is going to be the biggest guy moved here. So, I think that's kind of what I'm looking at.
That's what I was going to ask you. If anybody else in the Northwest Division do you think is likely to make any moves?
Denver could make the move, and I think that could be a dark horse third team because they do need a point guard. I think Napier could end up being the guy that ends up in Denver. So we could go ahead and ship Barton and Napier to Denver as a thank you gift for taking Mason Plumlee and giving us a first-round pick.
Wait. Oh, you mean Barton, like historically?
Historically, yeah. So
because I would be the first person at the airport to pick up Will Barton if he came back here. I would knocking everybody out of the way.
Will's the perfect kind of guy for Portland right now. He's
a
little bit undersized.
In the minivan, Will Barton, we're going. You're here.
But yeah, that's ultimately I think. And if it does change, like if a bigger name changes, changes teams, I think DeAndre is going to be the domino that kickstarts it all. I think if the deals happen, the DeAndre deal is going to happen with like 10 minutes to go, and then you're going to see a bevy of deals get closed out. I think it's going to be one of those kind of deadlines where it's going to be crickets, and then all hell's going to break loose.
A big cascading effect.
Yep.
Well, in the podcast, in the Woj podcast that I was talking about, they talked about how things have changed in the days since now they can like sign things on their iPads as opposed to like when they used to like put somebody in a car parked outside someone's house with the paperwork.
Yeah, just in case.
And like talk, and then like, okay, you got to go out and and they be filing things at 3 minutes till, because as I understand it, 3 p.m. Eastern
you have to have
time
it submitted.
is the
it doesn't
deadline.
Need to be done. It needs to be submitted. You have to submit
it has
the
to be
paperwork.
turned in by then.
Yep, and you could tweak things along the line, but it has to be submitted by then. So.
And that's noon our time on Thursday.
Yep. So
this is coming up quickly.
Yeah, that's the other cool thing about being Pacific Standard Time, and it's not 9 o'clock in the morning games because that sucks. But
that is not cool.
Having a trade deadline at noon.
Record, that is not cool.
No, it's not. It's miserable.
All right, Dan. Well, before we sign off, we have an email address. So if people want to send us questions that are longer than 280 characters, feel free to send those questions to blazersedgepod@gmail.com, and we can discuss those on the podcast. We would love to hear some of
user submitted
questions
are great. We will always take them. We may not use them on air, but we will always take them because they drive conversation and lead to really good points, even if we don't use them on air. So if it is good, it is great. It'll make it on air. It's a lot like Dave's mailbag. So.
Right. Well, we encourage people to write us again, blazersedge.pod. If you want to follow me on Twitter for all of my brilliant Blazer thoughts and Dolly Parton tweets and Lucille Ball memes, you can find me at TCB Biggs. And Dan, you want to take us out of here?
Yep. You can find me on Twitter at DMeringue, same for Instagram and pretty much everywhere else. You can also find me on non-game nights at 7 p.m. on NBC Sports Northwest for Blazers Outsiders. I'll go ahead and Venmo you my $5 now.
Well, that one I think is okay.
That was okay.
It's the dropping that, like when I was talking with my NBC producer.
I was talking to my boss, and I'm keeping it quiet because it's
But you did pretty good tonight.
Okay, see, I do what I can, and again, we also take user submitted questions there too. So if you guys are submitting questions to me on Twitter, Facebook, Insta, wherever for Blazers Outsiders, do it for this too, because guess what, folks? I'm here on this platform, and I can talk just as much here. In fact, I have
you can talk more here.
I have a free reign to kind of go wherever I want to go here.
Well, hold on there a minute, buddy. You do not have totally free reign.
I said almost free reign.
I would just like to get a little bit of credit for reining you in because of it's.
You are a Dan Wrangler. There's no doubt about that.
It is not an easy job.
God no.
And it could be worse. Let's just say.
Yeah. For all those out there that are like, oh my God, does this guy ever shut up? When I do shut up, say thank you, Tara, in your head.
Thank you, Dan. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
See, you say that like every other week now, so I say a lot of nice things. You just don't give me the credit.
Because you get incrementally nicer.
All right, and just because I want to say it again, Blazers Edge Night sold out. So thanks again to everybody who did that. Almost 2,300 people. I believe Dave put out a post the other day saying they still have a few extra tickets. So if you run a youth organization, church group, outreach mission, whatever, and you want to see if you can take some kids to a game, reach out to Dave on Twitter, reach out to Blazers Edge, and talk to them because I believe they still have a few extra tickets, which is absolutely awesome. For Tara, I'm Dan. Go ahead and catch us next week, we'll probably have the emergency pod for the trade deadline. Until then, we'll catch you later.